For many years, there's been a huge divide between Christians, Christian media, and Hollywood, with Hollywood often leading the charge with creativity, excellence, but often debauchery, with Christian media often riding the coattails of making mediocre art that's kind of mid and gets dismissed as too preachy and not artistic enough. But I remember 20 years ago going to see The Passion and getting a glimpse of what Christian art can be. And recently, with the explosion of The Chosen, it seems like things are starting to change. Hollywood seems to want in on some of the Christian consumer, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. Which leads us to Lionsgate, revealing the brand new trailer for Jesus Revolution, set to release in 2023, starring no one other than The Chosen's lead actor who plays Jesus, Jonathan Rumi. So is Hollywood attempting to take a piece of the pie of the Christian consumer? Or is this a good thing to further the gospel of Jesus? In this video, we'll be reacting to the trailer of the Jesus Revolution film, giving you some of the backstory that you may not know about, including the good and beautiful and the bad and ugly.
Ruslan.
I'm gonna be transparent with you guys. Putting together this video was difficult for me, and you'll know why if you stay till the end of this video. This is a very interesting, complicated, often sad story. And I don't mean to give you all the spoiler alerts because I really don't know where this story is going to go and how it's going to be personified. We're going to be reacting to the Jesus Revolution official trailer. Movie's not coming out until February of 2023. But it took me for a surprise when you guys started sending me this. Was this a fictional story about Jesus coming to Southern California in the 70s, or was it the actual story of the revival we saw break out in Southern California? Now, I go to church in Southern California, so I'm actually one person removed from the person who this movie is seemingly based on. We're gonna come back to that though. But for now, let's jump into this trailer. I'm gonna play it fast and try to stop because that's content ID. If you guys don't know what that means YouTube will shut my video down or whoever Lionsgate is will claim copyright on it. Okay, so we're gonna look at the trailer and I think it's well put together. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, but I'm gonna give you guys some of the backstory around this. Okay, this is a very, very interesting, fascinating story, and I think it's good that we have some form of church history because believe it or not, this story impacts a lot of people, especially how we do church in America. So here's the trailer, Jesus Revolution official trailer. Again, just bear with me. I'll have to poke around because some of the music is going to get played and it's going to get instantly claimed on the AdSense. All right. So it opens with this scene of a young girl telling this kid about, he's a square, and here comes the Woodstock era that was running the country at this point in time. This is in the late 60s. Starts in 1969.
These people are hippies, rebels against old. These people are.
Yeah, 1969.
These people are hippies, rebels against old-fashioned authority.
I think these kids need help.
They need is a bath.
And that's Frasier. Okay, now it was gonna blow your mind who he's actually playing in this movie, who I think he's playing. I'm not 100% sure.
You're passing judgment on people you know nothing about. Maybe that's why your church is so empty.
When God walks in here, brings me a hippie. I'll ask him what it's all about.
When God wants me to get a hippie, so there's this tension happening with regards to hippies and the countercultural movement, but then it all takes a turn.
Because I do not understand.
His house has a very good vibe.
Okay, so this is the character, and I was like, is this supposed to be comedy? Is this really Jesus coming as a hippie? What is happening here? Okay, so it's not Jesus. Okay, this is not fiction. This is based on a true story, and I'm going to tell you guys who this is.
Has a very good vibe. There is an entire generation searching.
Slow down.
Just in all the wrong places.
There's an entire generation searching just in all the wrong places.
If you want to reach my people, you need to speak to them in a language they understand.
If you want to reach my people, you have to speak to them in a language they can understand. So again, I'm watching this like, oh, is this like fiction? What is this? Is this a comedy? It's not a comedy. This is based on a true story. That is not Jesus. That is someone that, remember, I told you guys, I'm one person removed from, okay?
If I bring them in, I'm gonna lose my job.
We can only
If you're watching this and you know who it is, drop their name right now, okay? In the comments, in the chat. Drop their name right now if you know who this is, okay? It's a person that's impacted a lot of people, okay?
walk through doors open to us. In your church, I have the door that's shut.
You've probably noticed we have some guests here today. I'd like you to meet my new friends. Welcome.
They don't belong here. Half of them aren't even wearing shoes.
They're staining the new shag carpet.
They need our help.
So these hippies all started showing up to church. Okay? This caused the Jesus revolution of the 70s. This impacts almost every church, modern church, mega church in America today. Okay?
If you feel like you're misunderstood and judged, you will find forgiveness and freedom right here.
That was awesome.
Now that door is open any time of day. And if there are some who don't like that, well then that door works both ways.
All right, Pastor, let's begin.
I was almost done with this, but then you did what nobody else would even dare.
How cool is that, man? That pastor said, hey, that this door's open both ways. It's interesting, right? And again, just bear with me because we're going to get to the story behind the story.
This thing that we found, I feel like I belong.
You're gonna need a bigger church.
And you guys catch that logo? You guys know what that logo is? That is the logo of Calvary Chapel. Calvary Chapel is one of the biggest denominations in America. Hundreds of churches, probably thousands of churches. And I'm 95% sure that, ladies and gentlemen, is Chuck Smith. We're going to come back to more about Chuck Smith in a second.
Our country is a dark and divided place, but now there's hope, and it's spreading.
This is your home, and I want you to tell all your friends about it.
From the creators of I Can Only Imagine. So I thought, is this a troll? Is this Hollywood trolling? It's not. Greg Laurie is one of the executive producers. The directors are Christians, same directors that did the I Can Only Imagine movie, okay? So, what is this about? Who is this about? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the person that is played by Jonathan from The Chosen is actually a guy named Lonnie Frisbee. Lonnie Frisbee is who helped spark the Jesus revolution in the 70s. A bunch of hippies got radically saved, and that is a lot of how the Calvary Chapel movement initially exploded. Lonnie Frisbee got ordained by Chuck Smith. Chuck Smith was the founder of Calvary Chapel. Now, from one side, I see this and I go, man, this is beautiful. Because there's a lot of parallels to today, are there not? There's a lot of debauchery happening and countercultural, is it not? There's a lot of tension happening in society and a lot of division, is there not? From one standpoint, I go, man, this is interesting. This is coming out. I believe that maybe we could be on the heels of another revival. Who knows? Especially with the spread of technology, especially with as dark as the world is getting, especially with all the insanity happening with regards to people's sexuality and all this stuff. Similar time as the late 60s. Some would say that the late 60s were worse than it is today in regards to immorality, okay? So I'm excited. I think this is a dope story that needs to be told. Now, what people don't know is that there's a lot of complicated history here. Lonnie Frisbee was kind of wiped from the history of a lot of these origins that happened in Southern California. I am a member of a church called The Movement in San Marcos. One of our pastors who recently retired, named Don Apsher, was close friends with Lonnie Frisbee. And I've heard some incredible stories firsthand of people who were with him firsthand. Seemingly miraculous things that God was using Lonnie Frisbee to do, not just charismatic speaking and preaching. Miracles were happening. Revival was breaking out. It was a time like no other. Okay. Unfortunately, Lonnie Frisbee, who got married, then got divorced, was also known for leading a double life. He would party and do drugs on Saturday and dabble in homosexual relationships and then turn up and preach on Sunday. His life ended tragically. I'll come back to that in a moment. But what's even more interesting is the distance that happened with him and Chuck Smith, and he left Chuck Smith's and then went and was a part of the launch of Vineyard and kind of got caught up in some other weird camps. Vineyard was spreading all around Southern California. They were a bit more charismatic than Calvary Chapel. I would say Calvary Chapel was more like charismatic with a seatbelt. But you're not going to walk into a Calvary Chapel and hear everybody start praying in tongues, right? So they were charismatic, but not in we're just charismaniacs, right? And so Lonnie Frisbee ends up dabbling and living an immoral life while kind of being in ministry, and had some really complications in his life, and end up, unfortunately, tragically, towards the end of his life, seemingly really coming back to Jesus and getting solid with Jesus and reconciling with Chuck Smith and reconciling with all these folks, but tragically ended up passing away from complications of HIV and AIDS in 1993. Very tragic story. Very tragic story. Dare I say a potential cautionary tale of what can happen when someone is incredibly gifted, incredibly vibrant, maybe even has a special, and I know this sounds weird to those of you guys that aren't charismatic, but has some sort of anointing where God's using them in a unique way. And the other side of that, if you're coming from a very traumatized childhood and all kinds of issues. And by the way, folks who are non-Christians love to use Lonnie Frisbee as the example of the guy who sparked the revolution or the revival of the 70s, who was seemingly a closeted homosexual man. It's very complicated. Now, Lonnie Frisbee has a complicated history, and I love Calvary Chapel, but all my Calvary Chapel people buckle up, because Chuck Smith also has a complicated history. Not on the same degree, but unfortunately, and this is not me, I'll link a video up in the end cards, I'll do my best to link it up, of Chuck Smith and a video Mike Winger did of Chuck Smith falsely predicting the return of Jesus. Chuck Smith, arguably one of the best Bible teachers of our time, falsely predicted Jesus was going to come back. And that's not coming from Ruslan. This is coming from Pastor Mike Winger, who did a video on this, who's a Calvary Chapel pastor himself. A lot of complicated history here. A lot of stuff that's just very hard to process in terms of how God can use very flawed people. And I tell you guys that about Chuck Smith, not as a way to dunk on him or to say he's a bad guy. I tell you guys that about Chuck Smith as a way to say, holy moly, but for the grace of God, all of us are liable to blow it. Whether that's the trauma from our childhood impacting some of our decisions with lack of accountability, or weird zeal and maybe mishearing things that we thought were true. Everybody's liable potentially to fall short, man. And so it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad in terms of the nature of some of this stuff. And so I wasn't excited to make this video. I was excited that this is coming out. I'm really, really curious in terms of how is this movie going to play out? How much of this are they going to leave in? How much of the story are they really going to tell? I don't know. I don't have the answers for that. But I'm glad that these stories are getting highlighted. I'm glad that there's the story of revival that happened in the 70s. But by the way, a ton of churches, I would say all of our big churches in Southern California and beyond either came out of Calvary, came out of Vineyard, came out of Mike McIntosh's church, which has a huge church in San Diego called Horizon, which then launched the Rock Church, right? So this is all connected to the same tribe of people, all kind of sparked by a very complicated individual named Lonnie Frisbee. And again, it seems like he died in a solid place with Jesus, in a solid place with Chuck Smith, reconciled, in a good place, serving the Lord in the later years of his life. He has an autobiography out. I recommend, if you guys want to go deeper on this, Google Lonnie Frisbee. Look at his stories. His documentary's out. A dynamic communicator. He was preaching. The latest video I saw of him preaching was all the way in 1990. So just a few years before his passing. Okay. And of course, you should know who Chuck Smith is, right? So anyway, man, this is tough to talk about. So from one standpoint, I'm like, man, this is cool. I have hope, because I'm like, man, these are very similar times to what we're going through today. Could God cause another revival to raise up? Another part of me goes, wait, God could cause another revival to raise up, but all these asterisks, not a good look for the gospel, right? But it just goes to show that God always tends to make straight lines out of crooked sticks. So those are my thoughts on this, guys. I'm going to link up the video where Pastor Mike Winger talks about the Chuck Smith predictions of Jesus coming back over here. And I'll put another video over here. this was sent to me, and I was like, man, I can't believe that they're making a movie on this guy. I'm glad they're making a movie on this guy. I'm curious how it's all going to connect. I'll see you later, all right? Peace.